Hey guys, tonight we're stepping quietly into a Tudor kitchen. The rain drifts against warped glass panes, whispering in uneven rhythms while dough rises on the hearth, breathing its yeasty scent into the smoky air. Wooden beams drip gently with condensation, and the faint hum of crackling oak fills the silence. You might not know this, see? But Tudor kitchens were so large and alive that the royal one at Hampton Court employed over 200 cooks, servants, aid and spitboys, working day and night to feed a single king's meal. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Outside, the rain thickens, a patient percussion on the roof tiles above, while inside, the scent of roasted meat and wet ash clings to every surface. The stone floor is cool, the walls stained with years of smoke, and somewhere near the shadows, an iron pot murmurs like it's dreaming. You feel the warmth of the hearth wrapping around you, hear the steady groan of a turning spit. Every sound here is deliberate, the scrape of a knife, the sizzle of dripping fat, an orchestra of survival and appetite. It's strange to think that in this same glow, cooks once feared being burned alive by exploding ovens, which occasionally burst from trapped air pockets in their clay walls. And yet, despite the danger, there's comfort in this space. You sense how the kitchen wasn't just for food. It was life itself. Bread meant warmth, and warmth meant hope. Even the humblest servant found refuge beside the fire after a long, rain-soaked day. Tonight, you'll drift through this forgotten world, through rain on glass, through soft firelight, through the hum of centuries still echoing in stone. Let's step closer now, into the heartbeat of Tudor life, where every ember tells a story, and every scent feels like memory itself. The first breath of warmth greets you like an embrace. The fire hums in the corner, throwing restless light across thick oak beams. The rain outside slides down uneven glass panes, catching faint flashes of the flame. You can smell wet wool, smoke, and something earthy. Flour clinging to the air like mist. It feels ancient, patient, alive. In this room, heat is language, and every flicker of light tells a quiet story of survival. The air trembles with small sounds, a spoon clinking in a bowl, a knife scraping wood, the sigh of a boiling pot. You watch it all unfold in rhythm, slice, stir, pause. The cooks move like parts of one living body. You'd never imagine it, but the kitchen of Hampton Court was once so vast that it could roast up to 24 whole oxen in a single day, just to feed the royal household. That smell, that fire, that pressure, it was an empire of appetite. Each wall bears the scars of years, soot darkening the upper stones, oil seeping into the wood. Even the benches feel tired, yet proud. You trace your fingers across the rough grain and feel the grooves made by generations of hands. This kitchen has seen love, hunger, laughter, and death, and somehow remains kind. You realize that the people who lived here trusted this room as much as they trusted faith. A basket of onions rests in the corner, their papery skins whispering in the draught. Next to it, a clay jug sweats with cool water, condensation gathering like dew. Someone once said that Tudor kitchens were alive with water, fire, and motion. And you see it now, an ecosystem of heat and steam. The smallest drop of rain dripping down a beam feels just as sacred as the bread rising in the oven. The cook moves near the hearth, her shadow bending across the walls like a painting. She hums softly, a tune older than the words themselves. Music was rare here, but the rhythm of work made its own kind of song. The chopping of carrots, the slap of dough, the low roar of the oven, all of it blends into something that could lull anyone to sleep. The smell of bread thickens. It's sweet and smoky, sharp with yeast. Flour dusts her fingers as she presses into the dough, folding and turning, folding and turning. You remember how they believed warmth from the baker's hands could bless the loaf. The science didn't matter. The ritual did. In this kitchen, even superstition felt like prayer. She glances toward the door, a small opening that leads into darkness. Outside, the hallways are cold, but here the air glows gold. The kitchen was the pulse of the home, sometimes the only room where warmth existed. On winter nights, servants pretended to fetch water just to linger by the fire. You can almost feel their quiet gratitude in every ember. A pot hangs over the flame, bubbling gently. You lean closer and see roots, parsnips, leeks, maybe even turnips, turning the water into thick, fragrant broth. The Tudors wasted nothing. Even onion skins went into soups for colour. It's humbling, really, how frugality once meant creativity. You smile. The modern world could learn something from that. You hear the sound of a broom sweeping ash from the stone floor. It's steady, almost meditative. The sweep of bristles, the crack of embers, the hush of rain. This moment could exist in any century. Time feels irrelevant here, only warmth and rhythm matter. Above, the beams drip slowly from the damp air. The moisture meets the heat and releases a faint hiss, like the kitchen exhaling. Everything is alive, the wood, the water, even the walls. And in this symphony of work and rest, you find something beautiful. Stillness through motion. The cook pauses for a moment, wipes her hands on her apron, and glances toward the ceiling. Somewhere, the rain is still falling, but she doesn't seem to notice. She's part of something older, deeper, unending. This room will outlive her. And maybe that's the quiet grace of it all, to belong to something that never truly stops breathing. You take a final look around, at the glow of the hearth, the smell of rising bread, the steady patter on the window. The Tudor kitchen isn't just a place, it's a heartbeat. And tonight, you're standing right inside it. Your eyes drift to the wall, where rows of tools hang like relics. Iron ladles, cleavers, roasting forks, all blackened from years of fire. Each one tells a story through its wear. Some are bent slightly, others sharpened to a sliver. You think of how many meals, how many lives they've served. Tools here weren't just objects. They were extensions of flesh and will. A cook reaches for a cleaver, its handle dark with oil. He lifts it easily, like someone greeting an old friend. In one smooth motion, he brings it down through a chicken with a sound that's clean, decisive, final. The Tudors called their kitchen knives servants of silence, because when steel spoke, it meant work was done right. You can almost hear that metallic whisper through the centuries. Nearby, a wooden pestle thuds against a mortar. The rhythm is hypnotic. Thump, turn, scrape, pause. Inside, you see herbs, sage, mint, maybe marjoram. When crushed together, they release a sharp perfume that cuts through the heaviness of smoke. Fun fact: in Tudor kitchens, herbs were used as air fresheners long before soap became common. The cooks would hang bundles of lavender or bay leaves just to mask the smell of meat. The mortar itself is stone, smoothed by use. You run your fingers along its rim and imagine the weight of time pressed into it. How many hands? How many meals? How many mornings like this? There's a quiet dignity in the way simple tools endure. You think about how modern gadgets hum and whir, but none will ever hold the intimacy of a wooden spoon stained by generations. A boy enters carrying a pail of water. It sloshes as he walks, dark sleeves dripping. The water came from a nearby well, cold and heavy with minerals. He pours it into a basin, and you notice how the kitchen glows brighter for a moment, reflections rippling across the walls. Even water feels alive here. The Tudors didn't trust it much, though. Ale was safer to drink, boiled during brewing. So the cooks often mixed ale into soups and stews, making even the simplest meal slightly intoxicating. The boy places the empty pail down and stares at the fire. You can tell he's exhausted, soot clinging to his hair, eyes glazed from heat. He's one of the lowest ranks, a scullion responsible for cleaning and fetching. His hands are small, raw, red from lye soap and cold water. You can almost feel the ache in his fingers. Yet, in his stillness, there's quiet pride. He belongs to something that matters. The cook hands him a crust of bread, still warm. He eats it, slowly, eyes half closed, crumbs falling into the straw beneath his feet. Bread wasn't just food here, it was status. Fine white loaves for the noble, dark rye for servants. But tonight, it doesn't matter. Hunger equalizes everyone. The scent of yeast mingles with the smoke again, thicker now, sweeter. Somewhere in the corner, a cat curls beside the oven, tail flicking. Animals were common companions in these kitchens, partly for comfort, mostly for pest control. You think about how that same cat might have curled in the same corner for years, listening to the same rain. The cook returns to his chopping, the boy to his basin, the rhythm unbroken. It's a world built on repetition, slice, stir, wipe, repeat. And yet each motion holds purpose. Each gesture carries love disguised as labor. You glance again at the tools, blackened, simple, steadfast. They are the memory of every hand that ever held them. In a world before machines, these were the true companions of survival. Their silence speaks volumes even now. The rain hums softly above it all, steady and endless. You breathe in the scent of metal, smoke and earth, and realize that even in its roughness, the Tudor kitchen feels like a kind of peace. The hearth is the true soul of the Tudor kitchen. Its heat defines the day, its silence defines the night. You move closer, feeling the pulse of orange and gold shimmer over your skin. Sparks leap from the logs like tiny, glowing insects before vanishing into the blackened stone. The air shivers with warmth and smoke, heavy with the perfume of oak resin. You realize this fire isn't just comfort, it's control. Without it, nothing in this world works. A woman in coarse wool bends to stoke the flames. Her movements are slow, practiced, almost reverent. She doesn't just feed the fire, she converses with it. You can hear the logs sigh, the embers respond. Tudor fires had to burn constantly, day and night, or the kitchen would lose precious heat. Even more impressive, historians believe the royal kitchens at Hampton Court burned over 1 ton of wood every day just to maintain steady warmth. Imagine that, an empire of smoke rising endlessly into the damp sky. The firekeeper wipes her brow and leans back, her cheeks glowing red, She's called the turn brooch, the one who manages the spit. Behind her, rows of hooks dangle from the beam, holding cuts of mutton and pork glistening in fat. The air sizzles as juices drip into the coals, releasing the sharp scent of salt and char. You can almost taste it, metallic and sweet at once. This was luxury once. The smell of burning meat meant wealth. For the poor, that smell drifting from a manor window was both comfort and cruelty. In one corner stands a small iron contraption that looks like a cage. Inside it, a turn-spit dog once ran on a wheel, powering the rotation of the roasting spit.
Yes, they used trained dogs, running endlessly like living machines. The Tudors even bred a special type for it. Short-legged, sturdy, born for firelight. Some say when the kitchen fire was lit on Sunday, the dogs would hide under benches, knowing what awaited. You think about that, how progress has always had its price. The woman adjusts the logs, turning one with a poker that glows faintly red.
A small spark lands on her sleeve and dies instantly, leaving a tiny hole as memory. She doesn't flinch. Fire was both danger and teacher, something to be respected, never ignored. Many Tudor cooks carried burn scars like medals, reminders of the life they served. There's something oddly poetic in that. Devotion, leaving marks that only the flame could understand. The smoke coils upward, thick and blue. It smells of resin, grease, and ash, painting the air with texture. In the rafters, soot has gathered so thick that it sometimes drips in the heat like melted ink. You can hear the faint crack of tar as it cools. It's strange how even decay here feels rhythmic. Everything feeds, burns, rests, and renews. A small bell rings near the doorway, a signal from the upper hall. It means food is ready to be sent up. The woman sighs, grabs a wooden tray, and fills it with steaming platters. The bell reminds you that this warmth isn't just for comfort, it serves hierarchy. Somewhere above, nobles dine by candlelight, never knowing how much fire it took to make their night perfect. She watches as a boy carries the tray out. Her shoulders drop, her breathing slows. For a moment, she looks almost peaceful, illuminated by the very fire she tamed. You can feel the room quiet again, the logs crackling softly, like whispers before sleep. She adds one last piece of wood, a gesture both practical and sacred. Without her, the room would fade into cold silence. In Tudor life, those who kept the flame weren't noticed, but they were essential. You realize that, in every era, someone must guard the warmth while others rest. Outside, the rain continues, steady as breath. The glow of the fire bends and flickers on the wall, alive, restless, eternal. You watch it dance and think. Maybe that's what the Tudors understood better than we do now. Survival isn't noise or glory, it's quiet, constant tending. The woman finally sits, her hands resting on her lap, her eyes closing for just a second. You can almost hear her heartbeat syncing with the crackle. One life, one fire, one endless rhythm. At dawn, the kitchen awakens like an orchestra, tuning its strings. You hear footsteps above, doors creaking open, water sloshing, wood splitting. Every sound matters. Each noise part of the morning's prelude. You can smell salt, damp straw, the faint sweetness of yesterday's cider, still lingering in a jug. The rain has slowed, leaving the air heavy with petrichor. Inside, everything begins to stir again. A woman enters with a basket of vegetables, carrots, onions, leeks, fresh from the manor garden. The smell of earth still clings to them. She sets them down, and a man begins chopping, his blade rhythm steady and sharp. It's not chaotic, it's melodic. Everyone here knows their role. The Tudors called this harmony ordered labor, a divine rhythm between work and worship. To cook well was to pray without words. A young boy rushes in with a jug of ale. It foams over the rim as he runs, leaving little golden trails on the floor. The servants laugh quietly, not out of joy, but routine camaraderie. They share glances, not words, as they pass ingredients like musicians exchanging notes. This is how the day begins, every day. Repetition, not as punishment, but as peace. The head cook appears, her presence commanding. Her apron is darkened with age, her hands scarred yet graceful. She doesn't shout, she observes. Her eyes scan every motion, every flame. In Tudor hierarchy, the head cook was a figure of immense respect, responsible for feeding entire households and upholding their social status. A burnt pie wasn't just a mistake, it was a scandal. You can feel the weight of that quiet authority. Nearby, a scullery maid scrubs a mountain of pewter dishes. The water is grey and lukewarm, her fingers wrinkled and red. Each dish gleams faintly in the firelight, like silver moons rising from ash. She hums to herself, lost in rhythm. Strangely, there's serenity in her movement. She doesn't resist the work, she dissolves into it. A dog barks from the corridor, startled by thunder in the distance. The cook glances up, mutters something about God's temper, and returns to kneading dough. Religion was everywhere in Tudor life, even in kitchens. Every loaf began with the sign of the cross pressed into its top, a small plea for it to rise well and not burn. You picture that quiet faith baked into the smell of bread itself. The servants move like a single current, never colliding. They weave between one another with grace learned through exhaustion. You realize that efficiency, not speed, was their art. In modern kitchens, noise means energy. Here, silence means mastery. On the far wall, a clock ticks, one of the few mechanical wonders in this room. Its sound is deep and hollow, marking time not in minutes, but in tasks. Turn the spit twice, then stir the stew once, the cook says softly. You imagine centuries of people measuring their days not by the sun, but by the rhythm of heat and hunger. A splash breaks the monotony, a pail overturned, water rushing across the floor. No one panics. The boy wipes it with straw, laughter flickering like a spark before vanishing. Even small chaos has its place here. Life in the kitchen is never truly still, it just breathes differently. The air thickens again with scent, smoke, spice, sweat, and life. The servants barely speak now. Their movements alone are conversation enough. You can almost hear the unspoken bond between them, a shared exhaustion, a shared pride. Outside, the rain resumes, soft and loyal. It taps against the window, in rhythm with the chopping of knives, the bubbling of broth, the heartbeat of the fire. The Tudor kitchen plays its endless song again, quiet, imperfect, utterly human. You stand there for a moment longer, realizing that this harmony, this blend of chaos and care, is the reason the world above could feast. The servant's symphony never ends. It just fades into the next day's dawn. The smell of baking bread fills the air, heavy and hypnotic. You feel it cling to your clothes, to your hair, to your lungs. It's not just pleasant, it's ancestral. The Tudor oven, made of clay and stone, sits squat and wide like an old creature breathing through its cracks. Inside, loaves swell gently in the amber glow. The heat hums low, steady, alive. You can almost hear the dough stretching, whispering as it transforms. The baker stands barefoot before the oven, sweat shining on his brow. He moves slowly, measuring time by instinct, not by clock. You watch him touch the surface of the bread, his fingers leaving faint marks that vanish as the crust expands. There were no timers, no thermometers, only intuition. Curiously, the Tudors believed that a baker's success depended on the calmness of his heart. If his mood was sour, the loaf would be too. You smile. Maybe that's still true. Beside him, sacks of flour rest against the wall. The flour isn't white, but beige, rough with husks. Milling was coarse then, and bread was honest. For the poor, it was darker still, made with barley or oats. Each bite carried the flavor of work, not luxury. A single loaf could last a family several days, if they were careful. In this world, patience wasn't a virtue, it was survival. The baker's apprentice kneels beside the firebox, feeding small twigs into the coals. His hands are blackened, his nails packed with ash. He's learning the most sacred rule of the kitchen: never let the flame die. Bread rises on rhythm, not rush. He waits, breath held, until the baker nods. Only then does he open the oven. The smell that bursts forth is almost holy. Sweet, smoky, endless. They pull out the loaves with long wooden paddles, each one golden and cracked. Steam unfurls into the cool air, curling like ghostly fingers. For a moment, even the other servants pause their work to breathe it in. Bread was a symbol of peace in Tudor life. Breaking it meant trust, sharing it meant family. You can feel that same warmth settle in your chest. One loaf splits perfectly, its crust flaking like parchment. The baker smiles faintly. Success. The simplest act, flour, fire, and patience, has turned into sustenance. You realize that nothing in this room happens quickly. Every meal is a conversation with time. The bread, the heat, the hands, all part of one slow, eternal language. He sets aside a smaller loaf, rough and uneven. This one is for the servants, the trencher bread. It will harden overnight and be used as a plate tomorrow, absorbing juices before being fed to the dogs or the poor. Even waste has a purpose here. In Tudor life, function and faith were intertwined. Everything served something greater than itself. The apprentice reaches for another sack of flour and sneezes, sending a pale cloud into the air. It sparkles in the firelight like dust made of stars. You laugh softly. Even mistakes look magical here. The baker just nods, amused. He's seen every version of error before. In this kitchen, perfection is repetition. The oven crackles softly, its walls glowing faintly orange. You can feel the temperature shift as the fire wanes, leaving only deep, slow warmth. Bread cools on the wooden table, exhaling steam like living things. The smell settles into everything: fabric, wood, breath, memory. The baker wipes his hands on his apron and steps outside for air. The rain meets him instantly, cool and fresh against the sweat on his face. He smiles without looking at the sky. The world is wet and grey, but his work is done. Warmth waiting behind him. Inside, the last loaf rests in silence. You imagine the crackle of its crust as it cools, like distant applause. Bread has been made. Time has passed. The fire sighs contentedly, And so do you. Every kitchen tells its story through scent. Here, it's a collage of contradictions: smoke and sweetness, grease and herbs, rain and bread. You take a slow breath and feel it travel through you. The Tudor kitchen wasn't clean by modern standards, but it was alive. The smell told you everything: how the day was going, what was cooking, who was working, and how long until the next meal. There's the high note of rosemary, sharp and green, tucked into roasting lamb. Beneath it, the low sweetness of onions caramelizing on an iron pan. Layered between them, a deep, warm musk of wood and wet leather. These were not artificial aromas. They were honest. You might laugh to learn that Tudor cooks used lavender to scent the air after burning fish fat. Even centuries ago, they were fighting the same battle: how to make hard work smell like home. The sounds blend just as beautifully. The scrape of ladles against metal, the thump of kneading dough, the sigh of coals shifting in the grate. There's no music here, yet everything hums in harmony. You close your eyes and realize this is what rhythm sounded like before electricity. People moved with instinct, not timing. When the cook stirred the pot, the baker turned the loaf, and the scullion poured water. All of it formed a choreography older than words. A pot begins to hiss on the fire, the lid trembling with pressure. You lean closer, imagining the bubbling stew inside: roots, barley, maybe bits of leftover meat. It's peasant food, but it smells rich, alive. The Tudors called this pottage, the foundation of every meal, thickened by whatever scraps the day allowed. In winter, this pot never truly emptied, each day's meal born from the last. You think of it as a living soup, carrying memories forward, one spoon at a time. The cook lifts the lid, and steam escapes in a rush. It carries the earthy scent of turnips and ale. She stirs, tasting with the same spoon used since morning. Hygiene was simple then: one spoon, one pot, one fire. Yet somehow, people survived. Maybe because simplicity has its own kind of strength. In the far corner, someone grinds peppercorns with a stone. The sound is small but sharp, echoing like distant footsteps. Spices were treasures in Tudor England, expensive, exotic, symbols of wealth. Pepper from India, cinnamon from Ceylon, nutmeg from the Banda Islands. To season a dish was to show status. You can almost imagine a cook smiling with quiet pride as the scent of nutmeg filled the air. The rain taps gently again against the leaded glass. The pattern is soothing, a rhythm that keeps the mind anchored. You realize how perfectly it pairs with the sounds inside: rain and fire, wet and warm, nature and human will. The Tudor kitchen was both shelter and stage, where every sound played its part in the eternal song of making and mending. The cook moves to the pantry and opens a wooden chest. The hinges groan softly, releasing the scent of dried fruit and vinegar. Preserved cherries, salted fish, smoked bacon. The art of survival through flavor. You picture those jars, their colors dulled but still beautiful. The Tudors didn't have refrigerators. They had patience. A burst of laughter breaks through the hum, quick, soft, and gone. Even among exhaustion, there was joy. The rhythm of work created its own comfort, like music looping endlessly without needing to end. You close your eyes and listen. The hiss of the pot, the drip of rain, the soft rumble of distant thunder. It feels almost meditative, like the kitchen itself is breathing with you. And as you open your eyes again, you realize this harmony of smells and sounds isn't accidental. It's the alchemy of ordinary life, the magic of repetition turned into peace. The night deepens, and you sense a shift in the air, heavier, warmer, expectant. The kitchen below hums with life, while somewhere above, the great hall prepares for a feast. The glow of torches flickers through the floorboards, shadows swaying like dancers in another world. You can hear faint echoes, laughter, a harp, the clink of goblets. It feels strange, doesn't it? Two worlds separated by a single ceiling. One gilded, one sooty, yet both feeding on the same fire. A young kitchen maid glances upward as a plate of roasted goose is carried past her. Its skin glistens amber in the light, stuffed with apples and sage. The smell alone feels royal. She's never tasted goose herself, not once in her life, but she knows its scent by heart. In Tudor times, servants could be dismissed or punished for sampling noble food, even the tiniest bite. Hunger here wasn't just physical, it was social. You can almost feel the ache of wanting something that passes right before your eyes every day. In the great hall, the feast has begun. Platters of venison, swan, even peacock parade across the tables. The nobles drink spiced wine, called hippocras, tinted red with cinnamon and cloves. Their laughter rings out, sharp and careless. Below, in the kitchen, that same drink is boiled down, its dregs reused for gravy. Two versions of the same indulgence, one meant for display, the other for survival. A servant returns with empty dishes, streaked with fat and bone. The maid scrapes what's left into a bucket, scraps that will become tomorrow's stew. Her hands move quickly, almost invisible, yet in that gesture lives an entire history of unseen labor. You think of how many thousands like her have fed others joy in silence. And somehow, that silence feels more noble than all the noise above. Near the hearth, a boy ladles broth into wooden bowls. He hums a tune he's never heard finished. Maybe his mother once sang it while scrubbing linen in the rain. Maybe it's just instinct, the music that keeps the weary alive. You realize this kitchen isn't just a workplace, it's a memory machine. Every recipe, every motion, every song carries ghosts of someone before. The smell of roasted meat thickens again, clinging to every breath. The cook wipes sweat from her forehead with a sleeve blackened from smoke. Her face glows orange under the firelight, like a saint painted in oil. You think about how she'll never sit at the table she cooks for. And yet, there's no bitterness, just rhythm. In this world, meaning comes not from being seen, but from keeping things moving. A crash breaks the trance, a tray falls, cups scatter, wine stains the floor, red. The maid freezes. For a moment, the room holds its breath. Then the cook sighs softly, kneels down, and begins wiping. No shouting, no panic, just quiet acceptance. You understand, suddenly that basty, that patience here is more powerful than any crown. Above, laughter resumes. Someone toasts the king. Below, someone stokes the fire. Life continues in both worlds, intertwined by the same warmth. That's the strange poetry of the Tudor kitchen. The nobility never saw the faces that fed them, but they tasted their endurance in every bite. The maid finishes cleaning and looks again toward the ceiling. You wonder what she dreams of. Maybe she imagines sitting at that table, wearing silk, drinking hippocras without permission. Or maybe she just wants to sleep without the sound of dripping grease in her ears. The bell rings again. Another course, another storm of work. The kitchen stirs back into motion as if nothing happened. The line between grace and exhaustion blurs, and you can almost hear history whisper. Luxury is only borrowed heat. Outside, the rain continues its soft applause. The fire burns low, and in this perfect symmetry, hunger above, labor below, the night quietly endures. By midnight, the great hall is a theatre of excess. Candles drip wax over long tables, flickering like liquid gold. The nobles laugh through mouthfuls of sugar-coated fruit and marzipan castles. You can almost see the steam from the kitchens rising through the cracks, blending with the perfume of roasted swan. It's beautiful, grotesque, and oddly mesmerizing. A feast built as much for eyes as for appetite. A servant enters carrying a massive dish covered with silk. When she removes it, gasps fill the hall. A roasted boar's head, apple clenched in its teeth, surrounded by parsley and violets. The scent is both rich and animal, metallic beneath the sweetness of herbs. You might find it strange, but the Tudors saw this as art, food as theatre. The more impossible the dish looked, the more divine it felt. Down below, the kitchen trembles with energy. Steam clouds every corner, heat pressing like breath against your skin. Men and women rush with platters, bowls, knives, the choreography of chaos. You can barely hear over the sound of sizzling fat, boiling sauces immediately, and the dull roar of a dozen fires. This is where spectacle is born. You realize every illusion of luxury begins in sweat. One of the cooks flips open a pastry crust shaped like a swan. Inside, tiny larks burst forth, roasted whole, but staged to look alive. This was illusion food, a Tudor favorite. Pies that breathed, birds that sang, sugar that looked like bone. Historians say they even reassembled animals, sewing cooked parts together just to surprise their guests. You shiver slightly, torn between awe and discomfort. Beauty, it seems, has always borrowed from madness. A man in fine velvet enters the kitchen, wrinkling his nose at the heat. He's the steward, here to inspect the final courses. His voice is calm but cold, each word a reminder of hierarchy. The cooks bow without meeting his eyes. It's strange how the higher someone climbs, the less human their tone becomes. You can feel the unspoken tension ripple through the air like invisible smoke. The steward tastes a sauce, nods slightly, then leaves. The room exhales. The head cook mutters something under her breath, half prayer, half curse. You can't help but think of how fragile dignity was here. One bad meal could destroy a career. One mistake could define a life. For those in the kitchen, perfection wasn't pride, it was survival. Above, the nobles bite into sugar sculptures shaped like swans, unaware that sugar was worth more than gold. A single pound could cost weeks of wages. Yet here they are, breaking it between their teeth as if it were nothing. The irony feels almost theatrical, sweetness masking struggle. In the far corner, a scullery boy sneaks a lick of honey from a bowl, eyes darting nervously. For a moment, joy flickers. Then he wipes his mouth and returns to scrubbing pots blackened with grease. The difference between luxury and punishment is just one glance. You can feel the ache of that truth. How close and unreachable beauty can be. The sounds fade slightly as the final dishes leave the kitchen. Silence returns, warm and empty. Only the hiss of the hearth remains, whispering to itself. Above, laughter becomes distant thunder. You realize this kitchen isn't just a workplace, it's the invisible machinery of fantasy. Every banquet, every illusion, every shimmering plate of perfection began here, among burns, smoke, and exhaustion. And as the last candle flickers, the cooks finally sit. They eat their share of leftovers, crusts, bones, bits of fruit, and laugh softly among themselves. It's not bitterness, it's balance. They've seen both worlds and still find peace in their own. Outside, the rain lulls again. Inside, the embers sigh. The illusion has ended, but the warmth remains. Quiet, honest, and human. When the feast ends and the laughter fades above, the kitchen slips into its second life. Quieter, slower, but no less alive. The great fire is reduced to embers, their light breathing like the pulse of a sleeping giant. The air is heavy with smoke, spice, and a sweetness that lingers long after the plates have gone. You can feel the exhaustion in the room, but also something sacred. It's the calm that follows creation. A man sits by the hearth, rubbing his hands near the fading coals. He's one of the oldest cooks, his hair grey, his shoulders bowed. He murmurs a prayer of thanks, not to any saint, but to the fire itself. For centuries, people saw the hearth as divine, a link between life and death, warmth and judgment. In Tudor England, it was said that no house with a fire ever stood alone. You can almost see that truth glowing in his tired eyes. The scullery maid enters quietly, her steps soft on the damp stones. She carries a bucket of ash to dump in the yard. The rain greets her with a hiss as it meets the bucket's edge. Her sleeves cling to her arms, soaked through, but she doesn't complain. It's just the rhythm of life, labor stitched to weather, need stitched to routine. When she returns, she pauses near the window. Outside, the courtyard glimmers with puddles, the moon reflected in everyone like silver coins. The rain has eased to a mist, curling through the air like steam. She exhales slowly, watching her breath cloud the glass. Maybe she's thinking of someone, a lover far away, or a family she rarely sees. Loneliness, in a Tudor kitchen, wasn't rare, it was inherited. Behind her, the old cook stirs a pot of leftover broth. He adds a crust of bread, a dash of ale, and lets it simmer. The smell is simple, earthy, comforting. He pours her a cup and gestures for her to sit. For the first time all day, she does. They eat in silence, not awkward, just human. You realize that for people who spent their lives serving others, these quiet moments were feasts of their own. The cat stretches near the fire, purring softly. Its fur glows gold under the dying embers. The cook chuckles, murmuring that cats were kitchen spirits. Good luck if they stayed by the hearth. He scratches behind its ear, and the sound blends with the crackle of coal, the purest lullaby of domestic life. In the distance, a church bell tolls once, midnight. The rain outside has stopped entirely. The air smells of wet stone and extinguished fire. You can almost feel the temperature drop, the warmth concentrating only near the hearth. It's as if the whole world exhales together. The maid gathers her shawl tighter and leans back in her chair. The warmth makes her eyelids heavy. She fights sleep, but not very hard. The old cook smiles faintly. He's seen it countless times before. This is the hour when people drift without realizing, caught between exhaustion and peace. He gently covers her with a ragged blanket, his movements tender but wordless. The fire flickers once more, painting both faces in copper light. For a moment, time dissolves. You can't tell if it's 1550 or today. Just two souls resting by warmth, both equally human. In that silence, you notice something beautiful. The kitchen isn't just a place of labor, it's a cradle. It feeds the body, the mind, and the quiet ache of loneliness. Every wall, every beam, every ember has absorbed centuries of small mercies like this. The old cook leans back, closing his eyes, murmuring something about how the fire remembers. You believe him? Maybe that's why it never truly dies, because it carries the memory of those who needed it most. Outside, the last drops fall from the roof, and the night begins to settle like dust. The world has eaten, laughed, and slept, and now so will they. By morning, the kitchen is grey with smoke. The embers glow faintly beneath a bed of ash, and the smell of last night's fire lingers, metallic, oily, almost sweet. The rain outside hasn't stopped entirely. It's slowed to a whisper, tapping on the leaded glass like a metronome for routine. You can feel the heaviness in your chest, the mix of smoke and dampness that Tudor workers called the cook's cough. The scullion stirs first. He coughs, spits into the ashes, then begins his day with a wooden pail in hand. His hair sticks to his forehead, his skin grey from soot. You can almost feel the ache in his back as he hauls water from the courtyard well. In this world, rest doesn't last. Survival is just the next task waiting to be done. As he pours water over the flagstones, the floor sizzles faintly. The smell of wet ash fills the air, strangely clean in its own way. He sweeps, scrubs, wipes. Around him, tools gleam dully, black from the constant breath of smoke. The Tudor kitchen was beautiful at a distance, but up close it was a battlefield. Burns, cuts, bruises, all earned daily. Historians say cooks were among the most injured workers of the 16th century. You can see why. The head cook enters, yawning, her hair tied loosely. She doesn't greet anyone. She doesn't need to. Her presence alone restarts the rhythm. She pokes the embers with an iron rod until a small flame licks upward. "Come on then," she mutters. And like that, the kitchen breathes again. The fire grows steadily, swallowing kindling, consuming damp logs with soft pops. The air clears slightly, though soot still clings to everything: the ceiling, the beams, the inside of your lungs. You think about how this room never truly becomes clean. It's a paradox. The same fire that sustains also stains. But isn't that how survival works in every age? Warmth always leaves a mark. The maid enters next, carrying yesterday's bread to slice for breakfast. She laughs quietly when she sees her reflection in a copper pot. Streaked black with soot, eyes puffy from smoke. "A fine lady I am," she jokes. Even in grime, humor finds its way. You realize that laughter in this place isn't rebellion, it's release. A small bird flutters in through a window crack, startled by the light. It lands near the hearth, chirping once before darting out again. The cook watches it and smiles. "Good omen," she says. Tudors believed that birds inside meant good harvests, as long as they flew out alive. She crosses herself, half out of faith, half out of habit. The scullion finishes scrubbing and sits briefly by the door, rubbing his hands. His palms are cracked, his nails stained black. He looks older than he is. You can almost feel his silence, not emptiness, but endurance. Some people pray with words. Others pray by continuing. The smell of smoke changes as the fire strengthens, less bitter, more comforting. It seeps into your clothes, your skin, your thoughts. You imagine living every day surrounded by this scent, carrying it like a second soul. No wonder people of this age always smelled of fire. It was proof that they'd survived another day. The cook orders the boy to fetch more wood, and he rises instantly. Outside, the rain has stopped, but the sky is still the color of pewter. The yard glistens with puddles reflecting the kitchen's glow. You think? Maybe warmth means more when the world refuses to give it freely. Inside, the fire roars once more, chasing the cold back into the corners. The kitchen hums with life again, soft, smoky, imperfect, eternal. You breathe in, feeling the soot settle in your lungs like history itself. And somehow it feels like comfort. You step outside through a low wooden door, and the world changes. The air, though damp and cold, feels startlingly clean compared to the smoke within. The kitchen garden spreads before you, fenced by wattle and willow, its soil dark and rich from ash. You can still smell the kitchen behind you, fire, bread and meat, blending with the scent of mint, thyme and rain-soaked earth. This is where survival begins, where every meal starts as a seed. The path squishes softly beneath your shoes, the mud patterned with footprints of servants and cats. In the corner, a woman in a brown shawl crouches among the cabbages, slicing leaves into a basket. Her hands move quickly, despite the chill. She pauses only to shake off a worm or wipe her nose. The Tudor kitchen garden wasn't decoration, it was necessity. Most of the vegetables grown here never saw the Lord's table. They fed the servants, the pigs, the poor. And yet, they were tended with care as if meant for kings. You breathe in the scent of sage and rosemary, sharp and invigorating. Both were believed to bring protection, not just for flavor, but for faith. Rosemary for remembrance, sage for wisdom. In fact, Tudors planted sage near doorways to keep death away. You smile faintly. Maybe the superstition worked. The plants here look more alive than anything in the manor above.
A robin hops along the fence, pecking at seeds. The woman looks up and mutters something about good luck. Birds were omens here, always watched, always interpreted. In an age of uncertainty, nature was their calendar, doctor, and oracle. You realize how every leaf and insect carried meaning, how much knowledge has been forgotten simply because it couldn't fit into a book. The garden smells like wet clay and crushed parsley.
You run your fingers along the rough leaves, their surfaces sticky with morning dew. Some are bitter, some sweet, all essential. Nothing here is wasted. Even weeds are pulled, dried, and used as bedding for the livestock. It's a quiet system. Life looping into life, no part left behind. The woman straightens, brushing mud from her skirt. Her cheeks are flushed from the cold, but she smiles. She holds up a handful of leeks like a prize. In her world, this is victory. Food pulled from earth instead of paid for. You can feel her pride in the simplicity of it. It's strange how in the quiet, small acts of care feel holy. Nearby, a row of marigolds adds bursts of orange to the grey morning. They aren't for beauty, they're medicine. The Tudors steeped them in wine to treat fevers and wounds. Everything in this garden heals something. Stomachs, souls, or stories. You think about how different modern gardens feel. Ornamental, sterile, disconnected. This one is humble, useful, alive. A small wooden shed creaks as the door opens. Inside, bundles of dried herbs hang from the rafters like green chandeliers. Their scents mingle: lavender, bay, mint, fennel. The air feels almost magical. Some Tudors believed that hanging herbs this way kept away evil spirit, or at least rats. Perhaps both. The woman leaves her basket by the door and turns back toward the kitchen. The smell of bread drifts faintly through the rain. She hesitates for a moment, staring at the mist curling over the fields. The day hasn't truly begun, but she's already given it life. The first drops of rain return, gentle and slow. They darken the soil again, each one releasing a faint smell of warmth and decay. You realize that in this garden, survival smells like honesty, nothing perfumed, nothing false, just soil and rain and human hands. As you follow her back toward the kitchen door, you look once more at the rows of green. It's humbling to think that kingdoms rose and fell, yet someone was always here, bending over the earth, feeding them all. Back inside, the air feels denser, fragrant with something unfamiliar, sharp, foreign, and warm. You follow the scent to a narrow alcove lined with shelves. Jars of glass and ceramic stand in perfect rows, labeled in curling ink: ginger, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, pepper. This is the spice room, the crown jewel of any Tudor kitchen. For centuries, it was guarded like treasure. A man stands there, weighing tiny pinches of powder on brass scales. His fingers move delicately, almost reverently. He's the spice keeper, a position of trust so important that some estates required 2 keys, one held by him, one by the steward, just to open the chest. Spices were wealth made tangible, worth more by weight than gold. You can feel the gravity of it in the air. He uncorks a jar of cloves, and the smell floods the space, rich, biting, almost medicinal. The Tudors used cloves not just for taste, but for preservation, perfume, and even dentistry. A clove pressed against a toothache was a common cure. You imagine the sharp relief, the mingling of pain and sweetness, like so much of Tudor life. The spice keeper measures out a small portion into parchment, folds it neatly, and seals it with wax. Every grain accounted for, every smell a story. These spices traveled oceans, from India, Ceylon, Africa, carried by men who risked storms and pirates. To open one jar was to open the world. You realize how global the Tudor kitchen truly was, even when the people inside never left their village. He sneezes suddenly, the dust of pepper tickling his nose. He laughs softly, muttering that the devil hides in pepper. You can't tell if he's joking or half believing. Humor in this room feels fragile, as if laughter might spill something precious. The air is thick enough to taste. He opens another jar. Nutmeg. The smell is intoxicating, sweet and smoky. Nutmeg was once thought to cure the plague. People carried it in pouches around their necks, hoping its power would outlast death. Ironically, this tiny seed came from islands so far away that few Tudors could even imagine their location. They called them Spice Isles, places that existed half in maps, half in myth. A young servant enters hesitantly, clutching a recipe note. The spice keeper looks up, eyes narrowing. "How much?" he asks. "Just a pinch," she says. He nods slowly, counts exactly 3 grains of pepper into her palm. It's both comical and sacred, the weighing of flavor like counting coins. You can almost feel the tension of a world where taste was measured by wealth. When she leaves, He returns to his jars, sighing softly. You can tell he's tired, but there's pride in his solitude. His work touches everything, every feast, every stew, every cup of mulled wine, yet no one ever calls his name. Perhaps that's the strange piece of it, to serve without being seen, to flavor life without leaving a trace. He sits for a moment, rubbing his hands, the smell of cinnamon and dust clinging to his sleeves. The fire burns out, he murmurs, but spice lingers. You think about how true that is, how scent outlives sound, how memory survives through smell. Outside, thunder rolls faintly in the distance, low and soft. The jars tremble slightly on their shelves, their contents whispering of faraway places and perilous journeys. The air feels timeless. As you leave, the scent follows you, a ghost of sweetness and danger. You realize the Tudor kitchen wasn't just about survival. It was about wonder, curiosity, and connection to the vast unseen world. And for a moment, even through the smoke, you can taste eternity. Before the sun rises, the courtyard behind the kitchen stirs with another kind of work, rougher, colder, necessary. You hear the creak of the gate and the soft thud of hooves. A cart arrives under a grey sky, carrying meat wrapped in burlap and straw. The air is sharp with iron and rain. The butcher steps down, wiping his hands on his apron. Once white, now the colour of rust. He doesn't speak. His tools do the talking. Inside the butchery room, the air is colder still. Hooks line the ceiling like silent sentinels. The walls are stone, the floor wet, slippery underfoot. A single window lets in light the colour of pewter. You can hear the drip of rain mixing with the slow, rhythmic drip of something else. It's unsettling at first, then strangely calming. In Tudor kitchens, butchery wasn't horror. It was art, almost ritual. The butcher pulls a knife from his belt and tests its edge on his thumb. Sharp. He nods once. The Tudors sharpened blades on sandstone wheels, often humming hymns to keep pace. You imagine that tune now, echoing softly through the cold air. A man of faith and practicality, a prayer and a cut, both done cleanly. He hangs the carcass on a hook and begins to work. The movements are efficient, practiced. The sound is steady. Slice, pull, separate. It's not gruesome, just rhythmic. A strange fact. Tudor cooks believed that anger could spoil meat. They claimed a butcher's temper could sour the flesh. You wonder if that belief was superstition or simply an ancient understanding of energy. Either way, he works in silence. Calm, deliberate, peaceful. A scullion enters with a bucket of salt. The smell shifts. Metallic, turning to mineral. Salt meant life. It was preservation, protection, power. Without it, the Tudor kitchen would rot in a day. The boy sprinkles it over the meat, layer by layer, until it glistens faintly white. You can taste the air, dry, ancient, essential. The butcher wipes his blade and hangs it by the door. He stretches his back, looking almost human again after hours of stillness. He drinks from a mug of ale, the foam leaving white traces on his beard. Too warm, he mutters, staring at the firelight flickering through the next room. It's a curious thought, that warmth can feel wrong when you live in cold all your life. He cuts a small piece from a haunch of beef and tosses it to the cat. It catches the meat mid-air and disappears beneath the table. The butcher chuckles softly. The only one who eats before noon, he says. You can feel the affection in his voice, rough, gruff, honest. Outside, the first light of morning pushes through the fog. It glows faintly over the courtyard puddles, catching the reflection of the kitchen windows. The rain has paused, replaced by a thin wind that smells of hay and iron. The butcher lights his pipe and leans against the doorframe. The smoke curls upward, mingling with the breath of the waking world. He looks at his hands, large, scarred, trembling slightly. They've carried life and ended it. Yet there's no guilt, only respect. You realize how deeply the Tudors understood necessity. They didn't romanticize work, they revered it. The bell rings inside, calling for delivery. The butcher sighs, picks up a basket of cuts, and walks back into the warmth. Behind him, the courtyard returns to silence. Only the faint smell of iron remains, mingling with rain. And as you follow him through the door, you realize something profound. The Tudor kitchen wasn't powered by recipes. It was powered by hands. By midday, the air is thick and golden again, fire blazing, pots simmering, voices murmuring. But something else fills the room now, the smell of ale. A barrel rests in the corner, its wooden surface dark with condensation. The cook taps it with a mallet, and foam rushes over her fingers. The Tudors drank ale like water, because water, quite literally, could kill you. You watch her fill a jug and take a sip, eyes half closed. The ale is cloudy, warm, slightly sour. It's called small beer, low in alcohol, safe for daily drinking. Even children drank it. Historians say an average Tudor adult consumed over a gallon of ale per day, not for pleasure, but survival. Boiled during brewing, it was their best defense against disease. You smile faintly, cleanliness disguised as indulgence. A boy carries the jug down the hall, sloshing liquid as he walks. The smell of barley and yeast trails behind him. He pours it into a pot of stew, turning broth into something richer, fuller. The Tudors cooked with ale the way we use water, for soups, sauces, even puddings. You can taste it in your imagination, smoky, sweet, alive. In the corner, a maid washes dishes in a bucket of cloudy water. Her hands are red from the chill, her wrists thin. The bucket smells faintly of ash and lye, their version of soap. She scrubs until her reflection appears on a pewter plate, distorted but shining. You realize that purity here wasn't about clarity, it was about effort. The cook wipes her hands and gestures toward a large cauldron near the fire. Inside, a strange brew bubbles slowly, ale mixed with honey, herbs, and vinegar. Posset, she says, softly. A Tudor comfort drink, somewhere between medicine and indulgence. Served warm, it soothed sore throats and heavy hearts. You can almost taste it now, thick, sweet, slightly sharp. The kind of drink that makes the world blur at the edges. She ladles a cup for herself and leans against the hearth. Water lies, she mutters. You can't tell if it's a proverb or a memory. During this time, rivers carried filth, wells ran shallow, and water often made people sick. Ale, on the other hand, was honest, boiled, purified, trustworthy. You realize that what they called drinking was really surviving. A small girl enters, barely 8, carrying a mug bigger than her hands. She takes a sip of ale, wipes her mouth with her sleeve, and grins. The adults don't scold her. It's normal. The cook ruffles her hair, muttering, "Better this than fever." you feel a pang of strange admiration. A society that found health in fermentation and faith in foam. The air grows heavier as the day warms. The smell of yeast blends with roasting meat, forming a haze of sweetness and salt. Someone laughs near the fire, a sound that feels almost musical. It's the laughter of people who know that, for today, they've beaten hunger and cold. Outside, a bucket catches rainwater from the eaves, the drops falling with slow rhythm. The cook glances at it and shakes her head. For washing, she says, not for drinking. You can feel the weight of centuries in those 3 words, lessons carved by loss. The girl carries the last mug of ale to the table, balancing carefully. Foam spills over the rim and drips onto her toes. She giggles, wiping it away with the hem of her skirt. Even here, amid hardship, joy finds its way into the smallest gestures. The day rolls on and the barrel grows lighter. The room glows amber with firelight and barley haze. You realize the irony is the very drink that kept them alive was also what kept them calm. In a world that burned and drowned in equal measure, ale was their peace. The cook takes one last sip and sighs. The water lies, she says again, quieter this time, and the fire hums in agreement. The kitchen always smells of something: bread, fire, fat. But during plague years, another scent lingers in the air: fear. You can almost sense it, faint and metallic, hidden beneath the comfort of herbs and smoke. The year is 1563. London is coughing itself apart. And even here, in the quiet manor kitchen, everyone whispers the same word they refuse to say aloud. The cook throws handfuls of rosemary into the fire, watching it crackle and spark. The sharp green scent fills the room, fierce enough to sting your eyes. Tudors believed smoke could purify the air, that if your home smelled strong enough, death couldn't enter. Keep the miasma away, they'd say, as if smell itself were armor. You breathe it in, spicy, desperate, human. In the corner, a maid scrubs the floor with vinegar and salt, her hands raw. The smell bites the air. She hums softly, not out of joy, but to drown her thoughts. Each cough, each sneeze from outside makes her flinch. You realize this kitchen, normally filled with comfort, now feels like a sanctuary on the edge of the world. The door opens, suddenly keen. A boy enters, dripping with rain, clutching a bundle of herbs. From the apothecary, he says, setting them down: sage, wormwood, lavender, all meant to protect, none truly capable. Still, they burn them anyway, filling the air with smoke so thick it looks holy. You can barely see the fire through the haze, and somehow that's the point. Visibility means vulnerability. A strange fact: during the worst plagues, some Tudor cooks wore beak masks stuffed with herbs, precursors to what we now know as the doctor's plague mask. They looked more like myth than medicine. You can imagine the sight: smoke curling from the hearth, figures moving in masks shaped like birds. Survival and superstition sharing the same breath. The cook wipes her brow and sighs. If it comes here, she says softly, we'll just keep cooking. There's no defiance in her voice, only resolve. You realize that in times like these, normalcy becomes rebellion. The act of baking bread or stirring soup becomes an act of faith. The air grows heavier. You can almost feel the weight of their silence. No one dares speak of who's missing. The boy who fetched wood yesterday, the maid whose laughter once filled the hall. In plague years, absence becomes its own sound. Outside, the church bell tolls, once, twice, again. You feel it vibrate through the walls, slow and heavy. Inside, the cook whispers a prayer, tracing a cross in flour on the table. The flour floats briefly before settling like pale dust. Everything settles eventually. A bowl of pottage sits untouched on the counter. The smell of ale and onion still drifts upward, sweet but lifeless. The cook stares at it for a long time, then pours it into the fire. Steam rises, carrying the scent of food into nothingness. You can almost hear her thoughts. Better to feed the flame than risk the grave. The door closes and silence returns, thick, steady, eternal. The kitchen glows faintly through the smoke, a small world that refuses to die. You realize the Tudors didn't defeat fear, they simply worked through it, one meal at a time. When the last of the rosemary burn, the smell lingers. Clean, fierce, like hope, pretending to be courage. Fear never lasts forever. By the following year, the air feels lighter again, though people still talk in half whispers. The kitchen returns to its rhythm, and so does its favorite pastime, gossip. You can almost hear it now, buried beneath the chopping, stirring, and clatter. The soft buzz of voices swapping stories as naturally as breathing. A maid kneads dough on the table, her hands folding and pressing with practiced ease. Beside her, another sprinkles flour and leans in close. "Did you hear about the miller's daughter?" she asks, eyes wide. The first smiles faintly. "Which one?" There's laughter. The good kind. The kind that heals. In a world with few luxuries, stories were currency. The Tudors loved gossip as much as they loved bread. In fact, both came from the same place, warmth and necessity.
A loaf took hours to rise, and while waiting, people filled the air with talk. Some historians even believe the word tattle comes from the sound of kneading, a rhythmic, repetitive beat of hands against dough. You can almost hear it pat, stretch, whisper, laugh. A third woman joins them, carrying a basket of apples. She sets them down with a thud. "The Lord Steward is marrying again," she says, grinning. The others gasp. "He's near 60, someone exclaims.
They laugh so hard they nearly drop the flour scoop. For a moment, the kitchen feels young again. Even the fire seems to join in, popping with cheerful sparks. The cook pretends not to listen as she slices onions nearby, but her ears are sharp. "Mind you," she says calmly, "the steward's last wife was younger than his boots." The room erupts again. The Tudors may have lived under strict hierarchies, but humour blurred the lines. In laughter, everyone was equal. The maid flicks a pinch of flour at her friend, who retaliates with dough. A tiny battle begins, soft, silly, harmless. The cat darts away in protest, and someone almost trips over a broom. The room fills with sound, laughter, footsteps, the dull thump of dough landing on wood. You feel the warmth of it, humanity unfiltered. When the commotion dies down, they shape the dough into loaves and line them on a tray. Each one is imperfect, uneven, but full of life. The maid traces tiny marks on the tops, initials, maybe, or just symbols. "So we know which is whose," she says with a wink. Ownership, even of bread, mattered. As they wait for the loaves to rise, the talk turns softer. Someone mentions a letter from a cousin in London. Another wonders if there's war coming. The laughter fades into hums of thought. You realize gossip wasn't just amusement. It was survival. Information wrapped in laughter, fear disguised as curiosity. The smell of baking begins again, that gentle sweetness filling every corner. The women fall quiet, mesmerized by the sound of rising crust. You can feel their thoughts settling, their energy turning inward. The room glows in that golden peace only kitchens know. Chaos turned to calm by the simple act of making something warm. One of them leans against the wall and sighs.
"If I could be reborn," she says softly, "I'd be bred, fed, loved, gone." The others laugh quietly, not because it's funny, but because it's true. The oven crackles, the air hums, and as the bread begins to brown, the gossip fades into silence, not out of boredom, but satisfaction. Every story has been told, every laugh has done its work. In the end, peace rises the same way dough does, slowly, quietly, and only if you let it rest.
Night returns, soft and uncertain. The fire burns lower now and candles take its place. Dozens of them. Their light flickering against pewter, stone, and tired faces. You can almost hear the wax drip, slow and deliberate, forming tiny rivers that harden in silence. This is the hour of supper, the quietest, most honest meal of the day. A maid carries in a simple dish, boiled roots, yesterday's bread, a pot of pottage revived with ale and herbs. The smell is humble, onion, thyme, wood smoke, yet it feels like comfort itself. No grandeur, no music, just warmth. After a day of labor, this is what reward looked like. Not abundance, but enough. The servants gather around a rough wooden table, hands clasped, heads bowed. Someone murmurs, "Grace," thanking God for what the fire spared. It's a phrase you've never heard before, yet it makes perfect sense. In the Tudor kitchen, survival was never guaranteed. Every loaf that baked without burning, every stew that didn't sour, all small miracles. The candles sway gently in the draught, their flames bending like sleepy dancers. The light softens everything, wrinkles, scars, fatigue. You notice how exhaustion doesn't look ugly here, it looks earned. These faces, lined by years of heat and smoke, glow like weathered statues, fragile and strong all at once. One of the older women tells a story, something about a ghost in the manor's attic. The others groan, smiling, already knowing the ending. But she tells it anyway, voice rising and falling with theatrical flair. Laughter bubbles quietly between spoonfuls of stew. You realize this. Stories are seasoning for the soul. They stretch the meal, make it feel bigger than it is. A boy reaches for bread too soon and earns a gentle tap on the hand. "Patience," the cook says. "The bread waits for no one, but you'll wait for it." There's humor in her voice, but also truth. In this kitchen, every act, even eating, has rhythm, discipline, and grace. The smell of tallow candles mingles with the aroma of soup, faintly metallic but strangely cozy. You notice the shadows cast by their flames, stretching long and thin across the walls, merging and separating like spirits at play. For centuries, people believed candlelight could reveal the presence of the dead. Here, it simply reveals the living. The cook lifts her bowl and takes a slow sip. You can almost hear her sigh. Around her, everyone eats without speaking for a while, letting the sounds of the room fill the silence. Spoons tapping, rain softening on the roof, wood crackling faintly. It feels like the heartbeat of time itself. One candle sputters, then dies. The room darkens slightly, but no one minds. they simply move closer to the remaining flames. You realize something beautiful? Humans have always done this. Gathered around small light in large darkness, it's instinct, not habit. The youngest maid yawns, hiding her mouth behind her sleeve. The cook chuckles softly. "Off to bed with you after the wash," she says. The girl nods sleepily, her eyes reflecting firelight like tiny stars. There's tenderness here, unspoken, constant, woven into every task. The meal ends the way all days do, with gratitude, quiet and wordless. The bowls are cleared, the table wiped, and the last candle trimmed. No feast, no fanfare, just a slow return to calm. And as you watch the flame shrink to a single golden bead before fading, you realize, in the Tudor kitchen, peace wasn't silence or wealth. It was this: warmth, food, and one more day safely ended. When the night grows silent, and even the fire seems to rest, something stirs beneath the table, a soft scuffle, a whisk of motion. You glance down and catch a glimmer of eyes. A rat. Tiny, grey, uninvited. You'd think such a creature would inspire disgust, but here it's almost a neighbour. The rat pauses, nose twitching, whiskers shining faintly in the candlelight. It sniffs at a crumb of bread fallen from the table. The maid, half asleep, notices it too but doesn't flinch. "Leave it," she whispers to herself. "It's earned it." You realize how coexistence has always been part of survival. Even the smallest thief gets its share of warmth. In Tudor England, rats were as common as spoons. They lived behind walls, under floors, inside pantries. They were despised, yes, but also understood. Cooks learned to share space with them the way sailors shared with storms. Inevitable, annoying, but part of life. The Tudors even had a saying: "Where there's bread, there's God, and where there's God, there's mice." You smile. Theology with a dash of humour. The rat drags the crumb into the shadows, its tail leaving faint trails in the dust. Somewhere deeper in the kitchen, you hear another. A family, perhaps, nesting near the warmth of the oven. The air smells faintly of grain and ash. You realize that this world, though harsh, leaves room for everyone who needs to eat. The cook once told the servants a story, how during a harsh winter, when food was scarce, she caught a rat stealing oats from the bin. Instead of killing it, she set out a crust of bread each night. "If it eats," she'd said, "maybe we will too." Some laughed, others called it foolish. But that winter, no one starved, and the rats didn't chew through the grain sacks again. It's easy to romanticize kindness, but here it was practical. Mercy meant balance. The kitchen, after all, was not just for humans. Cats prowled, dogs slept near the hearth, birds nested in the rafters, rats scavenged underfoot. Life intertwined in a fragile, smoky harmony. The rat appears again, bolder now. It climbs onto a wooden beam and grooms itself, tiny paws moving with precision. You watch it in the flickering light, half repulsed, half fascinated. In another life, this same creature might have carried plague. Yet here, it's just hungry. It's humbling how survival erases judgment. A sudden creak. The cat wakes. Its eyes flash yellow in the dark. It moves low, slow, silent. The rat freezes. For a moment, the world holds its breath. Then, mercifully, the cat decides otherwise, curling back beside the dying fire. Peace however temporary, returns. You can almost feel the room exhale. The last candle burns short, its flame trembling. The rat slips away, disappearing into the shadows once more. Only a faint scratching sound remains, a reminder that even when humans rest, life continues in the corners. The cook enters quietly to check the coals. She notices the crumb missing and smiles faintly. "Good," she murmurs. She adds a few sticks to the fire, keeping it alive through the night. You realize that even this, tending embers, feeding strays, is ritual. The warmth grows again, faint but steady. The room smells of smoke, wax, and patience. Somewhere out of sight, small feet scurry home with a stolen meal. And in this gentle exchange, you find the essence of Tudor life. Everything eats, everything endures, everything belongs. The first frost arrives before dawn. You feel it creeping under the door, sharp, silver, deliberate. The kitchen is still dark, only the faintest glow of dying embers keeping the air from freezing. You can smell the cold itself, metallic, almost sweet, mixing with the old perfume of ash and bread. In the Tudor world, winter wasn't just a season, it was a test. The cook rises before the light, her breath misting in the air. She wraps her shawl tighter and pokes the fire back to life. Each spark feels like a victory. You can almost hear the wood sigh as it catches. One more day's warmth won, one more night survived. They say the coldest Tudor winters froze rivers solid enough to hold markets. Imagine that, an entire city trading above ice, while kitchens like this one burned endlessly below. A scullion hauls in firewood, his arms trembling under the weight. The logs are damp, hissing as they meet the flame. The smell of wet oak fills the room, thick and sour, yet comforting. He mutters that the snow outside is knee-deep, that even the well's frozen over. The cook only nods. Cold isn't news, it's routine. You realize how hardship becomes invisible when it visits every day. Breakfast is modest, porridge with salt, maybe a drizzle of honey if luck allows. The steam curls upward, ghostly and thin. The servants eat in silence, their breath clouding in the air. Even laughter freezes slower in winter. The cat stays near the hearth, unwilling to move. You can hear the faint crackle of wood splitting under heat. A small, faithful rhythm that sounds like survival itself. The cold warps the world. Bread hardens too fast. Fat congeals in bowls. Knives stick to the touch. A maid complains her fingers can't bend properly. The cook hands her a cup of hot ale and says, "Drink." It warms the blood faster than prayer. You wonder if she's joking? Probably not. The walls weep moisture that turns to ice along the corners. When sunlight finally pushes through the grey clouds, it glints off the frost like glass. Beautiful, but cruel. You imagine the nobles upstairs wrapped in furs, unaware of how the same fire that warms their hall nearly chokes the kitchen below with smoke. The chimney groans under the wind's pressure, sending smoke back into the room. The cook curses softly and opens the vent with a poker. For a moment, a rush of frigid air fills the space, sharp enough to sting your skin. You taste soot on your tongue. In Tudor times, lungs were as much a tool of work as hands. Smoke was a tax they all paid. The scullion sneezes, and the cook tosses him a rag. Better that than frostbite. she says. Her voice is calm, steady, like the fire. No panic, no drama, just continuity. You think about how this endurance, this calm in hardship, was the real nobility of their world. At midday, the air outside glows white with snow. The window panes bloom with frost flowers, tiny ice ferns crawling over the glass. The maid traces one absent-mindedly, her fingertip leaving a brief, warm trail before it freezes again. It's a small, futile gesture, but beautiful all the same. As the day fades, the kitchen darkens again. Smoke thickens. Firelight dances slower. You can hear wind pressing against the walls, trying to get in. It doesn't. The hearth holds steady, a single heartbeat in a world of cold. The cook sits beside it, her face glowing orange against the grey. "It'll pass," she says, softly, though no one asked. You believe her, because even in the stillest, coldest winter, this kitchen has never let the fire die. Winter deepens, but tonight there's something different. Laughter, busier footsteps, the scent of spice and roast filling the air. It's 12th night, the final celebration of Christmastide, when even servants are allowed a little joy. The kitchen hums with life again, the fire roaring, candles blazing, and the air thick with the smell of cinnamon and meat. You can almost taste it. Roasted goose, mince pies, and sweet ale steaming in mugs. The cook moves with purpose, face glowing, sleeves rolled high. For once, she isn't cooking for nobles. Tonight, this meal is for them, the ones who work, scrub, knead, and endure. The irony is sweet. They've spent months feeding others' feasts. Now they finally get their own. On the table sits the centerpiece, a great pie, part meat, part fruit, part mystery. The crust is golden, edges fluted like lace. Inside lies everything the week forgot: scraps of venison, dried apples, leftover bread, and a splash of wine. It's more than food, it's resurrection. The Tudors called this the Feast of Remnants. You can't help but admire their poetry, turning leftovers into luxury. A maid sneaks a taste of the filling, eyes wide with delight. "Better than the Lord's," she whispers. Everyone laughs. Even the cook smiles, pretending not to hear. You realize that joy tastes stronger when it's earned, when it's built from scraps and patience instead of gold and sugar. The steward enters, nodding at the spread. He doesn't speak much, just hands the cook a small coin and a rare smile. "You've done well," he says. Compliments in this world are worth more than silver. The kitchen exhales. The celebration begins. Someone starts humming a tune, soft and off-key. Others join in, clapping wooden spoons against the table. The rhythm fills the room. A heartbeat made of laughter and echo. Even the fire seems to join in, crackling in time. You can almost feel the walls vibrating with warmth. The cook pours ale into mugs, passing them around. Foam spills onto the table, and no one bothers to wipe it. They toast quietly, their words overlapping. To warmth, to work, to next year. The simplicity of it breaks your heart a little. A boy begins juggling apples, missing every third toss. The maids cheer him on anyway. Someone spills gravy, another slips on flour, and laughter erupts again. For once, chaos isn't punishment, it's freedom. You notice the old cook sitting by the hearth, smiling faintly, eyes half closed, she's watching everyone else more than eating. Perhaps joy, after a lifetime of toil, comes from seeing others full. You realize this, too, is a kind of feast, one made of sight, sound, and belonging. The room smells like warmth now, roasted fat, nutmeg, and laughter blending into one scent. You can feel it sink into your clothes, your hair, your bones. For centuries, this smell has meant home. As the fire begins to soften and the last pie crusts crumble into crumbs, the noise fades into hums of contentment. No one rushes to clean. No one wants it to end. And in that golden quiet, bellies full, hearts light, you finally understand what the Tudor kitchen truly celebrated. Not royalty, not perfection, but the simple miracle of another winter survived together. The night is deep now, the kind of darkness that feels soft, not frightening. You sit near the hearth, listening to the quiet crackle of what remains of the fire. The coals pulse faintly, glowing like tiny red hearts beneath their grey shell. Each flicker feels alive, a small breath of memory refusing to fade. You realize the kitchen doesn't sleep, it only dreams. The walls shimmer faintly with the reflection of those dying embers. Shadows stretch long, curling into corners where warmth cannot reach. You breathe slowly, matching the rhythm of the fire's sighs. The air is heavy with yesterday's scents. Roasted meat, baked bread, herbs now wilted on the sill. Everything lingers longer at night. Even time. A wooden spoon rests on the table, forgotten. It catches the light just enough to look golden. You can almost imagine it whispering, the echo of 1,000 meals, 1,000 hands, each leaving its shape behind. In the Tudor kitchen, tools were more than objects. They absorbed life. Even now, centuries later, you can feel their patience. Outside, rain begins again, soft and tentative. It taps against the window panes with the gentleness of a lullaby. The rhythm mingles with the hiss of the coals, a duet between earth and fire. You think about how the Tudors never feared weather the way we do now. Rain meant cleansing, renewal, rest. You lean back and close your eyes. The world shrinks to sound. Rain, fire, the distant creak of wood. The silence between those noises feels alive too, like a pulse you share with the house itself. You're not just watching history anymore, you're inside it. Somewhere above, water drips slowly from the roof. The sound is hypnotic, steady, unhurried, eternal. You realize the kitchen has heard every sound the world can make. Laughter, prayer, sobbing, silence. And still, it keeps breathing. You picture the countless fires that have burned in this same hearth. All different, all the same. Sparks rising, dying, repeating. A living heartbeat through centuries. Perhaps that's the closest thing humans ever made to immortality, flame that outlives its maker. A faint warmth touches your face. You open your eyes again. The coals have shifted, glowing brighter for a moment, as if they recognize your presence. The sight makes you smile. You whisper to yourself that even embers know when they're being watched. The cat stirs near your feet, stretching lazily before curling back into sleep. Its fur rises and falls with each breath, soft as smoke. You wonder how many generations of cats have claimed this same spot, guardians of warmth, quiet historians infer. The fire lets out a single pop, sending a small spark into the dark. It dies before touching the ground. You think of it as a story unfinished, but maybe that's the beauty of it. In this kitchen, nothing truly ends. It just turns into memory. The rain slows again. The world outside drifts towards silence, the kind that feels infinite. You take one last look at the glow and you understand. This place was never about hunger or work. It was about continuation. A gentle promise whispered in smoke. Keep going. And so you sit there, breathing with the embers until even their light feels like part of your own heartbeat. When morning finally arrives, it does so quietly. A grey light sliding across the stone floor, soft as linen. The air feels cool, almost fragile. You can smell dew before you can see it. For a moment, the kitchen doesn't move. It just exists, breathing faintly, caught between sleep and waking. The fire has died to ash, pale and fine, like powdered snow. You run your fingers through it and feel warmth lingering beneath the surface. There's something poetic about that. Heat hiding under what looks like ruin. The Tudors understood this balance instinctively. They built their days on it. The cook enters without sound, carrying a bucket of water. Her steps are slow, deliberate. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. Her presence alone restarts the room. She pours the water into a basin, and the sound of it fills the silence like music. You realize how even the simplest noise, water meeting metal, can feel sacred when the world is quiet. She looks at the ashes, nods once, and begins to rebuild the fire. Small twigs first, then logs, each placed carefully, like composing a prayer. You watch her hands, steady, patient, unhurried. The spark catches, smoke rises, and suddenly the cold withdraws. You breathe deeply. The room feels alive again. A new day begins with repetition. Bread will rise again, knives will scrape, water will boil. But in this early moment, before motion takes over, there's a gentleness that feels timeless. You realize mornings have always been the same, hesitant, humble, hopeful. The window glows faintly with the first sunlight. Dust drifts through the beam, turning in slow spirals. You can almost see time itself moving, visible only when stillness allows it. The cook hums a quiet tune, a melody so soft it might have no beginning or end. The sound of footsteps joins hers. The scullion, the maid, the boy. Each enters with half a yawn, half a purpose. The day rebuilds itself like clockwork, though none of them can see the gears. That's the beauty of repetition. It keeps the soul busy enough to survive. The smell of new bread returns, faint but promising. It mingles with the chill of morning air and the whisper of fire. You close your eyes for a moment, just to let the senses blur together. Warm, cold, sharp, soft. The texture of life itself. Outside, a bird sings once, clear and short. It's not announcing spring, just existence. The cook smiles at the sound, barely lifting her head. "Still here?" she murmurs. It's not a statement, it's gratitude. The cat appears again, stretching near the doorway, its tail brushing the floor like a broom. It blinks slowly at the sunlight before curling in its familiar spot. The rhythm of life has found its shape again. The fire steadies. The room glows gold, not from luxury, but from care. You can feel it in your chest, that quiet reminder that every new day is just another chance to keep the warmth alive. And as the bread begins to rise once more, you realize the greatest truth of the Tudor kitchen. Nothing endures by accident. It endures because someone, somewhere, always wakes up to start the fire again. The kitchen is awake again, though softly, like a person who opens their eyes but stays beneath the blanket. The morning light pours through the leaded windows in fractured gold, landing on every uneven surface. You can almost feel the warmth moving across the room, slow and deliberate. The scent that fills the air isn't one smell, but hundreds overlapping. Bread, smoke, herbs, wool, damp stone, and something faintly metallic from the pans cooling on the rack. It's the scent of life continuing. You notice how smell carries memory better than sight. The aroma of roasting fat, the sting of wood smoke, the sweetness of yeast, each one remembers something, someone. You wonder if, centuries ago, a young servant stood exactly where you are, breathing the same air, the same mixture of work and warmth. Perhaps she looked up at the same sunlight and thought the same simple thought, "It smells like home." The cook sprinkles flour on the table, her movements slow and methodical. Each cloud that rises catches the light, turning into pale gold dust before settling. It's mesmerizing, almost hypnotic. You realize that for her, these motions aren't just chores, they're anchors. Routine is memory in motion, a way to remember who you are without needing to think. She kneads the dough, pressing and folding with rhythm. The sound of her palms against the wood becomes a heartbeat. Soft, steady, eternal. The smell grows stronger, richer, sweeter. You can almost taste the future loaf just by breathing. The Tudors used to say that bread remembers the warmth of the hand that made it. You like that thought, that care leaves fingerprints, even on something that will soon be eaten. The door opens, briefly, and a gust of wind enters, carrying the scent of rain from the courtyard. It mixes with the smell of the dough, creating something bittersweet. Comfort, meeting impermanence. The cook looks up, smiles faintly, and closes the door again. Nothing lasts forever, she seems to say, but some things return often enough to feel like forever. A kettle begins to whistle on the hearth, its tone soft and wandering. The sound fills the room with a domestic kind of music, gentle, repetitive, familiar. The steam rises in tendrils that twist toward the ceiling like unspoken prayers. You imagine every Tudor home having this same moment, the first warmth of the day lifting into the air. You close your eyes, letting the scent of it all sink into you, the yeast, the smoke, the wet wood, the ghost of spice from last night's stew. It's impossible to tell where memory ends and imagination begins. Perhaps that's the point. The smell doesn't just describe the past, it connects you to it. A fly buzzes lazily near the window, tracing circles in the light. The cat watches it with half interest, tail flicking once, twice, then still. Even small things move slower here. The world has no need for hurry when time feels infinite. The cook hums an old tune again, one she likely doesn't remember learning. Her voice is soft, low, barely there. The song weaves into the air like another scent, invisible but grounding. You can't make out the words, but you feel what they mean. Peace, patience, presence. The bread rises slowly, predictably. You watch it and realize, oh, that's what this whole place teaches. Everything worth keeping takes time. The scent deepens, becomes whole. And in that smell, you sense centuries collapsing. All the people who ever lived, worked, or dreamed here, joining in a single breath. The fire pops once, a small sound like punctuation. The moment holds still, perfect in its simplicity. You breathe it in, committing it to your own memory, knowing it will follow you long after the story ends. Outside, rain begins again. A thin, persistent drizzle tapping against the old windows. The sound is gentle, steady, hypnotic. You can see the droplets racing each other down the wavy glass, merging, parting, tracing new paths like thoughts wandering before sleep. The world beyond is a blur. Grey sky, darker trees, faint movement. Inside, everything feels warm and slow, as if the rain has sealed time itself. You rest your hand on the cold window frame and feel how it vibrates softly with each drop. The Tudors would have known this sound well. Rain on glass meant safety, shelter, the luxury of being indoors. Leaded panes like these distorted the world outside, turning reality into watercolor. You think about that, how beauty can come from imperfection, how clarity isn't always what brings peace. The fire hums low behind you, its orange glow reflected faintly on the wet glass. The contrast is beautiful. Warmth within, water without. Two worlds divided by inches, yet perfectly balanced. You imagine the cook pausing in this same spot centuries ago, watching rain fall and thinking about the same simple miracle. I'm dry. A drop hangs at the top of the pane, trembling before falling. Another follows, another. The rhythm is perfect, irregular, yet constant. You could listen forever. The Tudors had no clocks in kitchens like these, but they didn't need them. They measured time by rhythm, chopping, kneading, footsteps, rain. The cat curls tighter near the hearth, a grey silhouette against orange light. You can hear its faint purr beneath the rain's whisper. The combination of sounds feels like breathing. One exhale from the world. One inhale from you. The house itself seems alive. Steam fogs part of the glass, blurring the view even more. You trace a line through it with your fingertip, feeling warmth on one side, chill on the other. The drop you touch slides down, merging with others. You think of all the people who've watched rain through this same window, cooks, maids, children, strangers. Every drop they saw has vanished, yet the pattern remains eternal. The smell of the room shifts slightly, fire softening, rain deepening. The air tastes faintly metallic, like sky. You inhale and feel your body relax further, as though each sound of rain is washing away thought itself. The Tudors might have called this moment God's quiet. You just call it peace. The cook passes behind you, her footsteps muffled by the damp floor. She glances out at the weather and mutters, "Good for the herbs." Her voice carries the same calm acceptance as the rain. Not hope, not worry, just acknowledgement. The wisdom of simplicity. You watch a beam of light push through the grey, faint but persistent. It scatters across the glass like liquid silver. The raindrops catch it briefly before they fall, sparkling for just a heartbeat. You realize that's how beauty works here. Fleeting, humble, easy to miss if you're not paying attention. The sound softens more, the rhythm thinning. The rain turns to mist, then to memory. You stay by the window anyway, just in case it begins again, because you've learned some sounds, like warmth and kindness, deserve to be waited for. And as the last drop slides down the glass and disappears, the kitchen feels impossibly still. Only the faint crackle of the fire remains, whispering that everything outside, the rain, the wind, the centuries, will always return. The day slides forward softly, without hurry. You can feel the stillness hanging in the air like a held breath. Nothing rushes in this room, even dust moves at its own rhythm. The kitchen has entered its gentlest hour, that fragile time between doing and being. You hear the faint ticking of cooling metal, the whisper of air through the chimney, the invisible heartbeat of the house. A spoon rests beside a bowl, both empty but still warm. You notice how the warmth seems to linger longer than it should, as though the meal itself refuses to leave. The Tudors often spoke of the spirit of the meal, the idea that food carried a kind of blessing, an afterglow that comforted even after hunger was gone. You like that thought. It feels true, even now. The fire has softened into quiet, slow pops echoing like old sighs. Smoke drifts upward in thin ribbons, curling around the rafters before vanishing. You follow it with your eyes until it disappears completely. That disappearance feels like peace, proof that nothing must last to matter. The cook sits near the window, mending a cloth with neat, patient stitches. The thread moves in and out, like breathing. Each pull repairs something small, almost invisible. You realize that most of life's work looks like this: fixing what no one notices, preserving what would otherwise fade. The Tudors built their survival on such quiet devotion. You glance at the wall where shadows of spoons and ladles hang. They look like ghosts of motion, frozen mid-swing. The light changes slightly as clouds pass, and the shapes shift, as though the room itself is remembering how busy it once was. You feel time stretching and folding over itself, soft as linen. The sound of distant footsteps fades down the hall, leaving the kitchen alone. The air thickens with silence again. It's not emptiness, it's fullness turned inward. You can sense the presence of everyone who's ever passed through here, layered like paint on old plaster. You realize silence isn't the absence of sound, it's the memory of it. A pot on the shelf still smells faintly of thyme. You lift it, just to breathe it in. The scent is ghostly but comforting, like the echo of a song you used to know. You smile because even forgotten things have their own kindness. The cat moves lazily from one chair to another, the sound of its paws soft as fabric. It yawns, showing perfect teeth, then curls again. You can't help but think, perhaps peace was never meant to be loud. The cook finishes her sewing and ties a knot. "That's that," she whispers, though she's speaking only to herself. The words sound final but gentle, as if closure is just another form of care. The sun shifts lower, painting the stone floor in long, golden stripes. Everything glows for a brief moment, brighter than seems possible in such a quiet place. Then, slowly, it dims again. Nothing lingers, and yet nothing feels gone. You sit still, breathing in the silence between sounds, the light between shadows. For the first time, you understand what the Tudors knew deeply, that the spaces between things are what make the world whole. Dusk approaches slowly, wrapping the world in grey-blue light. The kitchen is dim now, but not dark. The fire burns low, just enough to keep the chill away. You can hear the wind moving through the chimney, a low, hollow sound that feels almost like a voice. The walls hold the day's warmth like a secret, releasing it little by little. The cook stands near the door, gazing out at the courtyard. The rain has stopped again, leaving puddles that mirror the fading sky. She leans against the frame, her body outlined by the faint firelight behind her. Her face looks peaceful, lined but soft. You realize this stillness is her reward, not rest, not sleep, just this. A moment with nothing left to do. She turns back to the fire, tosses one last log onto the coals, and watches it catch. The smell of oak fills the air, deep and earthy. The Tudors called this the banked hour, when you feed the fire just enough to keep it alive through the night, trusting it to last until morning. You like that idea. Faith in the unseen, comfort in the quiet continuation of warmth. The cat stretches beside her feet, blinking slowly. Its purr blends with the soft crackle of flame. Together they create a rhythm that feels ancient, like the world exhaling. You find yourself matching your breath to that rhythm. Inhale, exhale, ember, silence. The light fades to amber, then to rust, then to the blue of twilight. You can almost see the temperature drop, a visible stillness settling over everything. The room's edges blur, details softening as shadow takes the lead. This is the hour when thought dissolves. You don't need to think anymore, you just need to be. She adjusts a pot on the hearth, though there's nothing cooking. The gesture is instinct, habit, love expressed through motion. The Tudors lived by such gestures, tending, mending, keeping alive. You wonder if the modern world lost something when it stopped finding meaning in small repetitions. A gust of wind sneaks through a gap in the door, stirring the ashes. Tiny sparks lift and vanish like orange fireflies. The cook watches them with faint amusement. "The fire dreams too," she says quietly. You believe her? You've been watching it dream all along. The sound of a church bell drifts through the distance. Slow, deep, final. It doesn't mark time here. It marks presence. A reminder that somewhere, someone else is also awake, tending another kind of fire. The thought feels comforting. The cook sets down the poker and sits, hands folded, eyes on the flame. She doesn't move for a long while. The silence grows thick, but not heavy. It's the silence of completion. The work of the day is done, and now the world is allowed to rest. Outside, the sky turns dark, but a single star peeks through the window's reflection. Its faint glimmer flickers in the same rhythm as the fire. Light meeting light, one from heaven, one from earth. For a moment, they're equal. You sit with her, not speaking, not needing to, just breathing, with the last warmth of the day. And as the coals fade to a dull, steady glow, you feel it, that perfect peace that doesn't ask for attention, only understanding. The house has gone quiet. Only the kitchen remains awake, glowing faintly like a lantern behind the centuries. The air smells of cooled bread, faint smoke, and the soft sweetness of ash, the perfume of things that once were warm. You stand in the doorway, watching the embers breathe their last, and realize the fire is no longer just light. It's memory. The walls shimmer faintly in the dark, their stones holding secrets of laughter, tears, and rain. Every crack in the mortar feels like a heartbeat paused mid-story. You can almost hear the echo of a spoon scraping, a kettle sighing, a whisper shared beside the flames. The room lives, even when no one is left to see it. You step closer to the hearth and crouch beside it. The coals are dim now, their glow pulsing in slow rhythm like something that refuses to let go. You understand why the Tudors never truly extinguished their fires, because to let the hearth die was to lose the center of everything. Warmth was not a luxury. It was a heartbeat that kept faith alive through winter. You brush your fingers near the ash, feeling the faint heat beneath the cool surface. It's the same lesson this place has been teaching since the first spark, that life always hides where you least expect it, beneath stillness, beneath silence, beneath the grey. Outside, the rain begins once more, soft, steady, patient. It runs along the window panes like threads of silver, echoing the same rhythm you've heard all night. You realize that this sound, this gentle tapping, has never truly stopped. It's the world's way of reminding you that everything continues somewhere, even when you sleep. The cook's chair remains by the fire, empty but not forgotten. Her apron hangs neatly on its peg. You can almost feel her presence in the air, calm, unhurried, endlessly kind. The spirit of the kitchen isn't gone, it's simply changed shape, drifting through warmth, scent, and memory. You take one last look around. The spoons, the breadboard, the window glowing faintly from distant lightning. Each detail feels sacred now. Ordinary things made holy by care. You understand that this is what history really is. The echo of small, good things done over and over until they become timeless. A gust of wind moves through the room, carrying the faint smell of time from the windowsill. The herbs tremble, their scent briefly brightening the air. The fire stirs as if in response, glowing once more before dimming completely. For a moment, everything aligns. Warmth, scent, silence, rain. The perfect symmetry of ending and continuation. You exhale slowly. The sound blends with the last sigh of the fire. Somewhere far away, a bell rings once, long and low, marking the hour when day fully gives itself to night. The rain softens, the room darkens, and peace folds itself around you like a blanket. The kitchen sleeps now, but not alone. It sleeps with its memories, the laughter, the hands, the rhythm, the rain. You stand in the stillness a moment longer, letting it all sink into you. The warmth you feel isn't from the fire anymore, it's from understanding. And as you finally turn to leave, you glance back once more at the hearth. The ashes seem to shimmer faintly, whispering something too quiet to be words, but you know what it means. keep the fire alive.